If you love God, but you keep exploding on the people you love the most, this message is for you. It happened again recently. You raised your voice. You said something you didn't mean. You shut the door harder than normal. You hung up the phone in anger, or answered that message with words you later read and didn't even recognize yourself in. And then came the guilt. Again, you promised you'd change. You prayed, took deep breaths, tried to calm down. But all it takes is one unfair comment, one disrespectful tone, one arrogant attitude, or that same old problem as always. And you react the same way. It's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you don't love God. It's because there is a truth about your anger that no one explained to you. A truth God uses to shape people whose peace doesn't break, even when they're wounded. And as long as you don't understand it, you'll keep feeling like your character is sabotaging what your heart truly wants. If you stay with me until the end, I'm going to show you, step by step, how to disarm that explosion before it comes out, how to walk with a real calm that comes from God and not just from holding everything in. And when you hear the last point, you'll understand why you've been losing this battle without realizing it, and what you need to adjust starting today so your anger stops controlling your decisions. Before we continue, think about your last big argument. The one where your tone went up, or your words hit like an arrow, where you felt the heat in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the shaking in your hands. You remember the other person's face, their dimmed expression, the heavy atmosphere afterwards. You remember how, when everything calmed down, you thought, I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to react like that. I ruined something again. That moment didn't just hurt you. It marked something in the heart of the person in front of you, and you know it. And in secret, you asked yourself, if God is with me, if I pray, if I want to do things right, why do I keep exploding like this? Why do I feel like I lose control with the people I love the most? I'm not speaking to you as someone perfect. I'm speaking knowing there is an invisible war inside you. A war between what you know is right and the reaction that comes out without asking for permission. Today, we're going to turn a light on in that place. Your anger doesn't appear out of nowhere. Your reaction is not just the other person's fault. What comes out when you explode reveals what's active inside. Unresolved wounds, pride dressed up as a sense of justice, built-up exhaustion, words you swallowed for years, unrealistic expectations, fear of being seen as weak. When someone talks down to you, ignores you, betrays you, provokes you, or disqualifies you, they're not just hitting the phrase of that moment. They're touching a story. They're touching memories. They're touching that old voice that told you, you're not enough. If you don't raise your voice, they won't respect you. Whoever stays quiet loses. That's why so often your anger is bigger than the situation itself. Because you're not only arguing with that person, you're arguing with everything you've been carrying. God sees that entire story, and He's not scared of your reaction. But He doesn't justify it either. He did not design you to live enslaved to what others do or say. He did not form you so any comment could ruin your whole day. He does not want you to keep apologizing for the same thing over and over, feeling like you are a walking contradiction. Here is the truth that begins to disarm your anger. Peace is not something you only find when everything is calm. It is something God places inside you, so you can protect it even when there is a storm outside. As long as you keep waiting for people to change, to respect you perfectly, to never provoke you, you will always live reacting. Because all of that is outside of your control. When you understand that your peace is a gift from God to your life, you start to see it as something far too valuable to give away in every argument. I want you to become aware of this. My peace is worth more than this shout. My peace is worth more than being right. My peace is worth more than proving the other person wrong. My peace is worth more than my wounded pride, because that is where the ground starts to shift. Maybe you say, but they provoke me. They disrespect me. They talk to me horribly. What do you expect me to do? Just stay quiet. The answer is not to swallow everything. The answer is to stop fighting with the same weapons that are destroying everyone else. When someone hurts you, there are two voices inside you. The first one says, answer back. Don't let them. Raise your tone. Make them feel the same. The second one, soft but firm, reminds you, don't give away your peace. Don't drop to the same level. Don't lose what God is building in you. Most of the time, the first voice wins, not because it's right, but because it's louder. Today, we start training your heart to strengthen the second one. If this message is describing your reality, stay until the end. Don't stop halfway. And when we finish, come back and write, God is disarming my anger, as a conscious decision, not as a cute phrase. It's a mark inside you. Your reaction reveals who you're giving control of your heart to. When you explode because someone spoke to you badly, in that moment, that person becomes the owner of your emotional state. They define your tone, your words, your day. When you allow someone else's frustration to direct your response, you are letting their storm become your storm. But God offered you something else, that He would rule your inner world, that His peace would set the rhythm, not someone else's provocation. Imagine your heart as a house. Your peace is the door. Every provocation is someone knocking on that door. You cannot stop people from knocking, but you can decide who you open to. Every time you explode, you open the door to the worst version of yourself. Every time you choose to breathe, to think, and to respond from what God says about you, you close the door to that automatic reaction and choose a different response. Now, concrete steps. First, identify your trigger. It's not about repeating, I'm patient, while everything inside you is boiling. It's about understanding what makes you snap. Maybe it's injustice. Maybe it's feeling unheard. Maybe it's when someone speaks to you with contempt. Maybe it's feeling unappreciated. Maybe it's that they remind you of someone who hurt you. Think of 3 recent moments when you lost control. See them as scenes. Ask, what keeps repeating? That pattern is your trigger. As long as you're unaware of your trigger, you'll keep reacting like a victim of your impulses. God does not see you as a victim. He sees you as someone who, with Him, is capable of choosing differently. When you recognize your trigger, you can anticipate it. You can notice when the atmosphere is rising and decide, this time I'm not giving up my peace. Second, understand that offense is a trap. You have the right to feel pain. You are not obligated to live trapped in it. Offense traps you when you replay the scene again and again, when you rehearse comebacks, when you imagine arguments. As you feed that, your peace leaks out. Your mind fills with noise. Not because God walks away, but because you stop leaving room for His voice. Disarming your anger is not saying, nothing happened. It is saying, yes, it hurt. Yes, it was unfair. But I will not allow this wound to define my character. I will not allow someone else's failure to turn me into someone who hurts the same way. I release this into God's hands. I choose to be free. Every time you choose to release, you diffuse a bomb. Third, stillness is strength. The system shouts at you. Answer back, prove yourself, don't let anyone walk over you. But there are moments when your true authority is seen in your decision not to react from your wound. Stillness is not cowardice. It is not accepting abuse. Stillness is having the self-control to not speak from rage, but from a heart aligned with God. It is feeling the sting of an unfair word and asking yourself before you respond, does what I'm about to say reflect who I want to be, or just my anger in this moment? That 1 second of pause can save a relationship. It can prevent a permanent mark in your children's minds. It can stop respect from breaking a little more. If you feel like you can't take that pause, that's exactly why you're here. To train it. To ask God not only to lift you up after the explosion, but to teach you to stop it before it starts. Fourth, Look at the pride behind your anger. Not only the pride that feels above others, but the one that whispers, "They shouldn't talk to me like that. I don't accept being corrected. I won't be the one who looks weak." That pride makes every correction feel like an attack, every boundary feel like humiliation. God has already defined your value. It does not depend on anyone's tone. When you embrace that, you can hear uncomfortable things without exploding. When you stop fighting for your image, your spirit rests. When pride goes down, peace rises. Fifth, redirect your focus. The more you stare at someone else's mistake, the more you justify your reaction. The more you fixate on their fault, the more your right to explode grows. But when, in the middle of conflict, you lift your eyes to God, you remember that your response matters too. You remember that your peace reveals who rules your inner world. You remember that you can choose a different tone, even when the other person doesn't deserve it in your eyes. That is not weakness. That is inner authority. Now let's land this in a real scene. You come home tired. Someone throws a phrase at you that lights you up. You feel the wave. Before, you exploded. Now, trained, you do this. You recognize the trigger. This way of talking has always hit me. Now I know what it is. You breathe, not as an empty trick, but as a conscious act. I'm not giving away my peace. God, give me the right words. You answer briefly, firmly, without poison. What you just said bothers me, but I want us to talk about it properly. That tone hurts me. I'd rather we speak differently, or you choose not to get pulled into a useless fight. I'm not going to argue right now. We'll talk later. When you're alone, instead of replaying the scene 100 times, you hand it over to God. You saw what happened. Heal what that touched in me. I don't want this wound to shape my character. If you do this again and again, your reaction starts to change. It's not magic. It's a process. Now let's talk about the guilt of the one who has already caused damage. Maybe you think about words that marked your children, about shouts your spouse can't forget, about explosions that filled your home with fear. You feel like it's too late. It's not too late, but you can no longer hide behind, "That's just how I am." That phrase slams the door on the change God wants to do in you. Every explosion leaves a mark, but every new decision does too. You can decide your home will no longer be your dumping ground, but a place of building. You can decide your character will no longer be an excuse, but a testimony. Your character is spiritual too. It's not just temperament. It is formed with every choice. The day you don't shout, the day you ask for forgiveness without excuses, the day you choose to hold back a phrase that would have destroyed someone. God takes every one of those choices and builds something solid in you. Imagine that every time you choose not to explode, God places a brick in a wall of inner peace. At first, it seems fragile, but choice after choice, it becomes real. There comes a point when the same provocations no longer break you the same way, and you realize it wasn't random. It was a process with God. There is also silent anger. You don't shout, but you punish with silence, with coldness, with distance. That ice also hurts. Disarming your anger means stopping using shouts and silence as weapons. It means learning to express what hurts you without shutting others down. Many believe, if I lower my tone, they'll step all over me. If I don't explode, they won't respect me. But true authority doesn't come from volume. It comes from consistency. When you know who you are in God, you don't need to prove it by destroying others. Here is a practical training for the next few days. Every time something lights up your anger, quietly recognize, this is a trigger. I'm not going to react on autopilot. Slow your body down. Loosen your jaw, drop your shoulders, breathe. Say something that doesn't attack identity, but expresses what you feel. I don't want to talk like this. I need us to have this conversation with respect. I'm upset. I'd rather wait a few minutes before we keep talking. At the end of the day, Review with God. What you did better, where you fell, what you can correct. There's more. Many times you explode on the people who should never pay the price, those who are always there, those who love you the most, because you see them as a safe place to dump everything. But your home was not designed to be a war zone. It was designed to be a refuge. Every explosion leaves footprints on those around you, and you were not called to be a source of fear for your own people. Saying, "That's just how I am," is not enough. God is calling you to something higher. Your anger can become a tool in the right hands, not to destroy, but to detect injustice, to defend what is good in the right way, to set healthy boundaries. Don't ask God to remove every strong emotion. Ask Him for wisdom so you don't use it as a weapon. Imagine two people facing the same provocation. One explodes, hurts, breaks things, and then feels empty. The other feels the hit, but chooses not to give away their peace. They respond firmly, without violence. They hand the pain over to God. Both felt anger. The difference is who rules inside. You decide who you want to be from today forward. You are not a slave to your past, to your temperament, to what you saw growing up, or to the times you failed. You are someone to whom God is extending a serious invitation. Let me disarm your anger before it destroys what you love the most. Let me show you a higher way. Let me form in you a steady, peaceful heart. If you respond to this invitation, this won't be just another video. It will be the moment you look back on and say, "This is where the change began." If what you heard spoke to your life, don't keep it just for yourself. Share this message with someone you know is struggling with their character. Write in the comments, "God is disarming my anger," as a conscious decision over your process. And subscribe so we can keep walking together in this inner training where your peace, your character, and your relationships are shaped with intention. Turn on everything you need to so you don't miss what's coming, because this process doesn't end here. It's just beginning.